We propose to offer additional evidence at this time concerning the use of the Nazi concentration camp against the people of Germany and Allied nationals. We propose to examine the purposes and the role of the concentration camp in the larger Nazi scheme of things. And we propose to show that the concentration camp was one of the fundamental institutions of the Nazi regime, that it was a pillar of the system of terror by which the Nazis consolidated their power over Germany and imposed their ideology upon the German people, that it was really a primary weapon in the battle against the Jews, against the Christian church, against labor, against those who wanted peace, against opposition or nonconformity of any kind. We say it involved the systematic use of terror to achieve the cohesion within Germany which was necessary for the execution of the conspirators' plans for aggression. We propose to show that the concentration camp was one of the principal instruments used by the conspirators for the commission on an enormous scale of crimes against humanity and war crimes, that it was the final link in a chain of terror and repression which involved the SS and the Gestapo and which resulted in the apprehension of victims and their confinement without trial, often without charges, generally with no indication of the length of their detention. My colleagues will present full evidence concerning the criminal role of the SS and the Gestapo in this phase of Nazi terrorism, the concentration camp. But at this point, I wish to simply to point out that the SS, through its espionage system, tracked down the victims, that the criminal police and the Gestapo seized them and brought them to the camps, and that the concentration camps were administered by the SS. This tribunal, we feel, has already been aware of the sickening evidence of the brutality of the concentration camp from the showing of the moving picture. More than that, individual prosecutions are going on and going forward before other courts which will record these outrages in detail. Therefore, we do not propose to present a catalog of individual brutalities, but rather to submit evidence showing the fundamental purposes for which the camps were used, the techniques of terror which were employed, the large number of the victims, and the death and the anguish which they caused. The evidence relating to concentration camps has been assembled in a document book bearing the letter S. Have they been handed? I might say that the documents in this book have been arranged in the order and presentation rather than, as we have been doing, numerically in sequence. In this book, we put them in as they occur in presentation. One document in the book, 2309 PS, is cited several times, so we have marked it with a tab with a view to facilitating reference back to it, since it will be referred to more than once. The Nazis realized early that without the most drastic repression of actual and potential opposition, they could not consolidate their power over the German people. And we have seen that immediately after Hitler became Chancellor, the conspirators promptly destroyed civil liberties by issuing the Presidential Emergency Decree of February 28, 1933. It's document number 1390 PS of the document book, and it sets forth that decree, which has already been introduced in evidence before this tribunal and is included in the USA Exhibit A. It was this decree which was the basis for so-called Schutzhaft, that is, protective custody, the terrible power to imprison people without judicial proceedings. This is made clear by document number 2499-PS, which is a typical order for protective custody, and we offer it for that purpose as a typical order of protective custody which has come into the possession of the prosecution. It bears USA Exhibit number 232. And I should like to quote from the body of that order, beginning the quotation, "Order of Protective Custody, based on Article 1 of the Decree of the Reich President for the Protection of People and State of 28 February 1933, Reichsgesetzblatt, Roman numeral 1, page 83, you are taken into protective custody in the interest of public security and order. Reason, suspicion of activities inimical toward the state." End of the quotation. The defendant Goering, in a book entitled Aufbau einer Nation, published in 1934, sought to give the impression, it appears, that the camps originally were directed at those whom the Nazis considered communists and social democrats. We refer to document number 2324 PS. Oh, yes, USA Exhibit 233. This document is an excerpt from page 89 of the German text, of the German book. And we refer to the third and fourth paragraphs of the document, which read as follows, quoting, "We had to deal ruthlessly with these enemies of the state. It must not be forgotten that at the moment of our seizure of power, over 6 million people officially voted for communism and about 8 million for Marxism in the Reichstag elections in March. Thus the concentration camps were created, to which we had to send first thousands of functionaries of the communist and social democratic parties." End of the quotation. In practical operation, the power to order confinement in these camps was almost without limit. The defendant Frick, in an order which he issued on the 25th day of January 1938, as Minister of the Interior, made this quite clear. An extract from this order is set forth in document number 1723-PS, to which we make reference. It bears United States Exhibit 206. And I wish to read Article 1, beginning at the bottom of page 5 of the English translation of this order, quoting it directly. "Protective custody can be decreed as a coercive measure of the secret state police against persons who endanger the security of the people and the state through their attitude in order to counter all aspirations of enemies of the people and state. And the first two paragraphs of this order, that's the end of that quotation, now referring to the first two paragraphs of this order, which are found at the top of page 1 of the English translation. Quoting, "In a summary of all the previously issued decrees on the cooperation between the party and the Gestapo, I refer to the following and ordain. 1. To the Gestapo has been entrusted the mission by the Führer to watch over and to eliminate all enemies of the party and the national state, as well as all disintegrating forces of all kinds directed against both. The successful solution of this mission forms one of the most essential prerequisites for the unhampered and frictionless work of the party. The Gestapo, in their extremely difficult task, is to be granted support and assistance in every possible way by the NSDAP." End of the quotation. The conspirators then were directing their apparatus against the enemies of the state, against disintegrating forces, against those people who endangered the state with their attitude. Whom did they consider as belonging in these broad categories? Well, first there were the men in Germany who wanted peace. We refer to document number L83.
What's the date of that document you've just been referring to, 1723 PS?
What page?
What's the date of it?
The date of it? January 25th, 1938.
Thank you.
We refer now to document number L-83. Which has already been introduced and which is included in USA Exhibit A. Well, we're now giving a new plan. This document consists of an affidavit of Gerhard Sieger. And I wish only to read from page 1, paragraph 2 of that affidavit. Two, quoting, "During the period after World War I, up until my commitment to the Leipzig jail and Oranienburg concentration camp in the spring of 1933, following the Nazis' accession to power in January of that year, my business and political affiliations exposed me to the full impact of the Nazi theories and practice of violent regimentation and terroristic tactics. My conflict with the Nazis by virtue of my identification with the peace movement and as duly elected member of the Reichstag representing a political faith, Social Democratic Party, hostile to National Socialism, clearly demonstrated that even in the period prior to 1933, the Nazis considered crimes and terrorism a necessary and desirable weapon in overcoming democratic opposition." End of that quotation. And passing to page 5 of the same document and the paragraph marked E, small e, and quoting, "That the Nazis had already conceived the device of the concentration camp as a means of suppressing and regimenting opposition elements was forcefully brought to my attention during the course of a conversation which I had with Dr. Wilhelm Frick in December 1932. Frick at that time was chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Reichstag, of which I was a member. When I gave an emphatic answer to Frick concerning the particular matter discussed, he replied, "Don't worry. When we are in power, we shall put all of you guys into concentration camps." When the Nazis came into power, Frick was appointed Reichsminister of Interior and promptly carried out his threat in collaboration with Goering as chief of the Russian state police and Himmler. End of the quotation. This paragraph shows that even before the Nazis had seized power in Germany, they had conceived the plan to repress any potential opposition by terror. And Frick's statement to Seeger is completely consistent with an earlier statement which he made on the 18th of October, 1929. We refer to document number 2513-PS, which also has already been received and has been included in USA Exhibit A. We refer to the first page of the English translation, page 48 of the German text. On page 1, the quotation begins, "This fateful struggle will first be taken up with the ballot, but this cannot continue indefinitely, for history has taught us that in a battle blood must be shed and iron broken. The ballot is the beginning of this fateful struggle. We are determined to promulgate by force that which we preach. Just as Mussolini exterminated the Marxists in Italy, so must we also succeed in accomplishing the same through dictatorship and terror." End of the quotation.
This is the defendant, is it?
Yes, the defendant, Frick, Wilhelm Frick. There are many additional cases of the use of the concentration camp against the men who wanted peace. There was, for example, a group called the Bible Forscher, that is, Bible research workers, most of whom are known as Jehovah's Witnesses. They were pacifists, and so the conspirators provided not only for their prosecution in the regular courts, but also for confining them in concentration camps after they had served the judicial sentences. And we refer to document number D-84. Bears USA Exhibit number 236. This document is dated the 5th day of August, 1937, and it's an order by the secret state police at Berlin. And I refer particularly to the first and last paragraphs of this order, as follows. Quoting, "The Reichsminister of Justice had informed me that he does not share the opinion voiced by subordinate departments on various occasions, according to which the arrest of the Bible Forschers after they have served a sentence is supposed to jeopardize the authority of the law courts. He is fully aware of the necessity for measures by the state police after the sentence has been served. He asks, however, not to bring the Bible forgers into protective custody under circumstances detrimental to the respect of the law courts. And then the paragraph number 2, quoting, if information regarding the impending release of a Bible forger from arrest is received from the authorities carrying out the sentence, my decision regarding the ordering of measures by the state police will be asked for in accordance with my circular decree dated 22/4/37, so that transfer to a concentration camp can take place immediately after the sentence has been served. Should a transfer into a concentration camp immediately after the serving of the sentence not be possible, Bible forgers will be detained in police prisons. End of the quotation. The labor unions, of which I think it is safe to say the majority are traditionally opposed to wars of aggression, also felt the full force of Nazi terror. A member of the American staff, Major Wallace, has already submitted evidence for this tribunal concerning the conspirators' campaign against the trade unions. But the concentration camp was an important weapon in this campaign. And the tribunal will recall that in document number 2324 PS, to which I have made reference this morning, that the defendant Goering made it plain that members of the Social Democratic Party were to be confined in concentration camps. Now, labor leaders were very largely members of that party, and they soon learned the horrors of protective custody. And we refer to document number 2330-PS, which has already been received as part of USA Exhibit A, and which consists of an order that one Joseph Simon should be placed in protective custody. We refer to the middle of the first page of the English translation of that order, beginning with the material under the word reasons.
I think you should read the sentence before that, the 2 lines before it. Oh, well, the words are, the arrestee has no right to appeal against the decreed protective custody.
The arrestee has no right to appeal against the decreed protective custody. And then comes the title, Reasons. Simon was for many years a member of the Socialist Party and temporarily a member of the Union Socialist Populaire. From 1907 to 1918, he was Landtag deputy of the Socialist Party. From 1908 to 1930, Social Democratic City Councilor, Stadtrat, in Nuremberg. In view of the decisive role which Simon played in the international trade unions and in regard to his connection with international Marxist leaders and central agencies, which he continued after the national recovery, he was placed under protective custody on the 3rd day of May, 1933, and was kept until 25 January, 1934, in the Dachau concentration camp. Simon is under the urgent suspicion that even after this date, he played an active part in the illegal continuation of the Socialist Party. He took part in meetings which aimed at the illegal continuation of the Socialist Party and propagation of illegal Marxist printed matter in Germany. Through this radical attitude, which is hostile to the state, Simon directly endangers public security and order. We do not wish to burden these proceedings with a multiplication of such instances, but we refer the tribunal to documents which have already been offered in connection with the presentation of the evidence concerning the destruction of the trade unions. In particular, we wish to refer to document number 2334 PS and document number 2928 PS, both of which are included within the USA Exhibit A. Thousands of Jews, as the world so well knows, were of course confined in these concentration camps. The evidence on this point will be developed in a later presentation by another member of the prosecuting staff of the United States. But among the wealth of evidence available on this point, showing the confinement of Germans only because they were Jews, we wish to offer document number 3051 PS. Which bears USA Exhibit number 240. This is a copy of a teletype from SS Gruppenführer Heydrich, and it's dated the 10th of November, 1938. It was sent to all headquarters of the state police and all districts and sub-districts of the SD. We refer to paragraph 5 of this teletype. Paragraph 5 is found on page 3 of the English translation. Begins at the bottom of page 2 and runs over to page 3. Quoting paragraph 5, inasmuch as in the course of the events of this night, the employment of officials used for this purpose would be possible. In all districts, as many Jews, especially rich ones, are to be arrested as can be accommodated in the existing prisons. For the time being, only healthy men, not too old, are to be arrested. Upon their arrest, the appropriate concentration camps should be contacted immediately in order to confine them in these camps as fast as possible. Special care should be taken that the Jews arrested in accordance with these instructions are not mistreated. Himmler in 1943 indicated that use of the concentration camp against the Jews had been motivated not simply by Nazi racialism. Himmler indicated that this policy had been motivated by a fear that the Jews might have been an obstacle to aggression. There's no necessity to consider whether this fear was justified. The important consideration is that the fear existed. And with reference to it, we refer to document 1919-PS, which bears USA Exhibit number 170. The document is a speech delivered by Himmler at a meeting of the SS Major Generals at Posen on the 4th of October, 1943, in the course of which he sought to justify the Nazi anti-Jewish policy. We refer to a portion of this document, or the speech, which is found on page 4, paragraph 3 of the English translation. Starting with the words, I mean the clearing out of the Jews. I'm quoting, I mean the clearing out of the Jews, the extermination of the Jewish race. It's one of those things it is easy to talk about. The Jewish race is being exterminated, says one party member. That's quite clear. It's in our program. Elimination of the Jews, and we're doing it, exterminating them. And then they come 80 million worthy Germans, and each one has his decent Jew. Of course, the others are vermin, but this one is an A1 Jew. Not one of all those who talk this way has witnessed it. Not one of them has been through it. Most of you must know what it means when 100 corpses are lying side by side, or 500, or 1,000, to have stuck it out and at the same time, apart from exceptions caused by human weakness, to have remained decent fellows. That is what has made us hard. This is a page of glory in our history which has never been written and is never to be written. For we know how difficult we should have made it for ourselves if with the bombing raids, the burden and deprivations of war, we still had Jews today in every town as secret saboteurs, agitators, and troublemongers. End of the quotation. It is clear, we say, from the foregoing that prior to the launching of the aggression, the concentration camp had been one of the principal weapons by which the conspirators achieved the social cohesion which was needed for the execution of their plans for aggression. After they launched their aggression and their armies swept over Europe, they brought the concentration camp to occupied countries. And they also brought the citizens of the occupied countries to Germany and subjected them to the whole apparatus of Nazi brutality. Document number R-91 is USA Exhibit number 241. This document consists of a communication dated the 16th day of December, 1942, sent by Mueller, M-U-E-L-L-E-R, to Himmler for the chief of the security police and the SD, and deals with the seizure of Polish Jews for deportation to concentration camps in Germany. I'm beginning with the first paragraph. It says, quoting directly, in connection with the increase in the transfer of labor to the concentration camps, ordered to be completed by 30 January 1943, the following procedure may be applied in the Jewish section. 1. Total number, 45,000 Jews. 2. Start of transportation, 11 January 1943. End of transportation, 31 January 1943. The Reich Railroads are unable to provide special trains for the evacuation during the period from 15 December 1942 to 10 January 1943 because of the increased traffic of armed forces leave trains. 3, composition. The 45,000 Jews are to consist of 30,000 Jews from the district of Bialystok, 10,000 Jews from the ghetto Theresienstadt, 5,000 of whom are Jews fit for work, who heretofore had been used for smaller jobs required for the ghetto, and 5,000 Jews who are generally incapable of working, also over 60-year-old Jews. And passing the next sentence, as heretofore, we come to the sentence, as heretofore only such Jews would be taken for the evacuation who do not have any particular connections and who are not in possession of any high decorations. 3,000 Jews from the occupied Dutch territories, 2,000 Jews from Berlin, dash 45,000. The figure of 45,000 includes the invalid, old Jews and children. By use of a practical standard, the screening of the arriving Jews in Auschwitz should yield at least 10,000 to 15,000 people fit for work. End of the quotation. The Jews of Hungary suffered the same tragic fate. Between 19th of March 1944 and the 1st of August 1944, more than 400,000 Hungarian Jews were rounded up. Many of these were put in wagons and sent to extermination camps. And we refer to document number 2605 PS, USA Exhibit number 242. This document is an affidavit made in London by Dr. Rudolf Kastner, a former official of the Hungarian Zionist organization. We refer to page 3 of the document, the third full paragraph. In March 1944, quoting, together with the German military occupation, arrived in Budapest a special section commando of the German secret police with the sole object of liquidating the Hungarian Jews. It was headed by Adolf Eichmann, SS Obersturmbannführer, chief of Section 4, Period B of the Reich Security Head Office. His immediate collaborators were SS Obersturmbannführer Hermann Krummi, Hauptsturmführer Wislasini, Punchy, Novak, Dr. Seidel, and later Daniger Wertak. They arrested and later deported to Mauthausen all the leaders of Jewish political and business life and journalists, together with the Hungarian democratic and anti-fascist politicians. Taking advantage of the interregnum following upon the German occupation, lasting 4 days, they have placed their quislings in the Ministry of the Interior. On page 7 of that same document, the 8th paragraph, beginning with the words, commanders of the death camps. I'm quoting it. Commanders of the death camps gassed only on direct or indirect instructions of Eichmann. The particular officer of 4B who directed the deportations from some particular country had the authority to indicate whether the train should go to a death camp or not, and what should happen to the passengers. The instructions were usually carried by the SS-NCO escorting the train. The letters A or M, capital letters A or M, on the escorting instruction documents indicated Auschwitz or Majdanek. It meant that the passengers were to be gassed. And passing over the next sentence, we come to these words. Regarding Hungarian Jews, the following general ruling was laid down in Auschwitz. Children up to the age of 12 or 14, older people over 50, as well as the sick, or people with criminal records who were transported in specially marked wagons, were taken immediately on their arrival to the gas chambers. The others passed before an SS doctor who on sight indicated who was fit for work and who was not. Those unfit were sent to the gas chambers, while the others were distributed in various labor camps. End of the quotation. In the so-called Eastern Territories, these victims were apprehended for extermination.
Mr. Dodd, don't you want page 5 for the numbers which you've stated? 27th of June, 1944, up to the 27th of June, 1944. You haven't yet given us any authority for the numbers that you've stated.
Oh, yes. Up to the, on page 5 of that same document, 2605 PS. Quoting, up to the 27th of June, 1944, 475,000 Jews were deported. In the eastern, so-called Eastern Territories, these victims were apprehended for extermination in concentration camps without any charges having been made against them. In the Western occupied territories, charges seem to have been made against some of the victims. Some of the charges which the Nazi conspirators considered sufficient basis for confinement to the concentration camps are shown by reference to document number L-215, which bears USA Exhibit 243. This document is the summary of a file, or the file, the dossier of 25 persons arrested in Luxembourg for commitment to various concentration camps, and sets forth the charges made against each person. Beginning with the paragraph after the name Henrici, at the bottom of the first page. And quoting, the name Henrici, charge by associating with members of illegal resistance movements and making money for them, violating legal foreign exchange rates, by harming the interests of the Reich, and being expected in the future to disobey official administrative regulations and act as an enemy of the Reich. Place of confinement, Natzweiler. And next comes the name of Kreyer, and the charge by being responsible for advanced sabotage of labor and causing fear because of his political and criminal past. freedom would only further his antisocial urge. Place of confinement, Buchenwald. Passing to the middle of page 2, after the name Monty, charge by being strongly suspected of aiding desertion. Sachsenhausen, place of confinement. Next, after the name Juncker, charge because as a relative of a deserter, he is expected to endanger the interests of the German Reich if allowed to go free. Place of confinement again, Sachsenhausen. Jäger is the next name. And the charge against Jäger because, quoting, because as a relative of a deserter, he is expected to take advantage of every occasion to harm the German Reich. Place of confinement, Sachsenhausen. And down to the name Ludwig. And the charge against Ludwig, quoting, for being strongly suspected of aiding desertion. Place of confinement, Dachau. Not only were civilians of occupied countries, but also prisoners of war were subjected to the horrors and the brutality of the concentration camp. And we refer to document number 1165 PS, which bears USA exhibit number 244. Now, this document is a memorandum to all officers of the state police, signed by Mueller, the chief of the Gestapo, dated the 9th of November, 1941. The memorandum has the revealing title of, and I quote it, "Transportation of Russian prisoners of war destined for execution into the concentration camps." I wish to quote also from the body of this memorandum, which is found on page 2 of the English translation. And I quote directly, "The commandants of the concentration camps are complaining that 5 to 10% of the Soviet Russians destined for execution are arriving in the camps dead or half dead. Therefore, the impression has arisen that the Stalags are getting rid of such prisoners in this way. It was particularly noted that when marching, for example, from the railroad station to the camp, a rather large number of prisoners of war collapsed on the way from exhaustion, either dead or half dead, and had to be picked up by a truck following the convoy. It cannot be prevented that the German people take notice of these occurrences. Even if the transportation to the camps is generally taken care of by the Wehrmacht, the population will attribute this situation to the SS. In order to prevent, if possible, similar occurrences in the future, I therefore order that, effective from today on, Soviet Russians declared definitely suspect and obviously marked by death, for example with typhus, and who therefore would not be able to withstand the exertions of even a short march on foot, shall in the future, as a matter of basic principle, be excluded from the transport into the concentration camps for execution." End of the quotation. More evidence of the confinement of Russian prisoners of war in concentration camps is found in an official report of the investigation of the Flossenburg concentration camp by the headquarters of the United States Third Army, the Judge Advocate Section, and particularly the War Crimes Branch, under the date of the 21st day of June, 1945. It's our document number 2309-PS and bears USA Exhibit number 245. At the bottom of page 2 of the English text, the last two sentences of that last paragraph say, and I quote them, "In 1941, an additional stockade was added at the Flossenburg camp to hold 2,000 Russian prisoners. From these 2,000 prisoners, only 102 survived." End of that quotation. Soviet prisoners of war found their allies in the concentration camps too. And as page 4 of this same document, 2309 PS, will show, particularly paragraph 5 on page 4, and I quote it, "The victims of Flossenburg included among the Russian civilians and prisoners of war, German nationals, Italians, Belgians, Poles, Czechs, Hungarians, British, and American prisoners of war. No practical means was available to complete a list of victims of this camp, however. Since the foundation of the camp in 1938 until the day of liberation, it is estimated that more than 29,000 inmates died." End of the quotation. Escaped prisoners of war were sent to concentration camps by the conspirators, and these camps were specially set up as extermination centers. And we refer to document number 1650 PS, bearing USA Exhibit number 246. This document is a communication from the secret state police of Cologne. And it's dated the 4th day of March, 1944. At the very top of the English text, it says, "To be transmitted in secret, dash to be handled as a secret government matter." In the third paragraph, quoting, "concerns measures to be taken against captured escaped prisoners of war who are officers or not working non-commissioned officers except British and American prisoners of war. The Supreme Command of the Army has ordered as follows. 1. Every captured escaped prisoner of war who is an officer or a non-working non-commissioned officer except British and American prisoners of war, is to be turned over to the Chief of the Security Police and of the Security Service under the classification Step 3, regardless of whether the escape occurred during a transport, whether it was a mass escape or an individual one. 2, since the transfer of the prisoners of war to the security police and security service may not become officially known to the outside under any circumstances, other prisoners of war may by no means be informed of the capture. The captured prisoners are to be reported to the Army Information Bureau as, quote, escaped and not captured, unquote. Their mail is to be handled accordingly. Inquiries of representatives of the protective power, of the International Red Cross, and of other aid societies will be given the same answer. End of the quotation. The same communication carried a copy of an order of SS General Muller, acting for the Chief of the Security Police and SD, directing the Gestapo to transport escaped prisoners directly to Mauthausen. And I quote the first two paragraphs of Muller's order, which begin on the bottom of page 1 and run over to page 2 of the English text. Quoting, "The state police directorates will accept the captured escaped officer prisoners of war from the prisoner of war camp commandants and will transport them to the concentration camp Mauthausen following the procedure previously used, unless the circumstances render a special transport imperative. The prisoners of war are to be put in irons on the transport, not on the station if it is subject to view by the public. The camp commandant at Mauthausen is to be notified that the transfer occurs within the scope of the action, quote, Kugel, unquote. The state police directorates will submit semi-yearly reports on these transfers, giving merely the figures, the first report being due on 5 July 1944, sharp." Passing the next three sentences, we come to this line, "For the sake of secrecy, the Supreme Command of the Armed Forces has been requested to inform the prisoner of war camps to turn the captured prisoners over to the local state police office and not to send them directly to Mauthausen." End of the quotation. It is no coincidence that the literal translation for the German word Kugel is the English word bullet, since Mauthausen, where the escaped prisoners were sent, was an extermination center. Nazi conquest was marked by the establishment of concentration camps over all of Europe. In this connection, we refer to document number R129. It's a report on the location of concentration camps signed by Pohl, P-O-H-L, who was an SS general, who was in charge of concentration camp labor policies. Document R129 bears our USA exhibit number 217. I wish to refer particularly to Section 1, paragraphs numbered 1 and 2 of this document, which are found on page 1 of the English translation. It's addressed to the Reichsfuhrer, SS, bears the stamp secret. Reichsfuhrer, today I report about the present situation of the concentration camps and about measures I have taken in order to carry out your order of the 3rd March, 1942. 1. At the outbreak of war, there existed the following concentration camps. A. Dachau, 1939, 4,000 prisoners, today 8,000. B. Sachsenhausen, 1939, 6,500 prisoners, today 10,000. C. Buchenwald, 1939, 5,300 prisoners, today 9,000. D. Mauthausen, 1939, 1,500 prisoners, today 5,500. E. Flossenburg, 1939, 1,600 prisoners, today 4,700. F. Ravensbrück, 1939, 2,500 prisoners, today 7,500 prisoners. Letter goes on to say in paragraph number 2, quoting, in the years 1940 to 1942, 9 further camps were erected. A. Auschwitz, B. Neuengamme, C. Gusen, D. Natzweiler, E. Grossrosen, F. Lublin, G. Niederhagen, H. Stutthof, and I. Arbeitsdorf. In addition to the camps in the occupied territory mentioned in this document R129, from which I have just read these names and figures, there were many, many others. The official report by the United States Third Army Headquarters, which we've already made reference, document number 2309, on page 2 of the English text, section 4, Roman numeral 4, paragraph 4. Quoting, concentration camp Flossenburg was founded in 1938 as a camp for political prisoners. Construction was commenced on the camp in 1938, and it was not until April 1940 that the first transport of prisoners was received. From this time on, prisoners began to flow steadily into the camp. Exhibit B-1, Flossenburg was the mother camp, and under its direct control and jurisdiction were 47 satellite camps, or outer commandos for male prisoners, and 27 camps for female workers. To these outer commandos were supplied the necessary prisoners for the various work projects undertaken. Of all these outer commandos, Haasbruck and Leitmeritz in Czechoslovakia, Oberstaubling, Mulsen, and Saal, located on the Danube, were considered to be the worst. End of the quotation. I do not wish to take the time of this tribunal to discuss each of the Nazi concentration camps which dotted the map of Europe. We feel that the widespread use of these camps is commonly known and notorious. We do, however, wish to invite the tribunal's attention to a chart for which we have had prepared. The solid black line marks the boundary of Germany after the Anschluss. And we call to the tribunal's attention the fact that the majority of the camps shown on the chart are located within the territorial limits of Germany itself. So they're the red spots, of course, on the camp. In the center of Germany, there is the Buchenwald Camp, located near the city of Weimar. And at the extreme bottom of the chart, there is Dachau, several miles outside of Munich. At the top of the chart are Neuengamme and Bergen-Belsen, located near Hamburg. To the left is the Niederhagen Camp in the Ruhr Valley. In the upper right, there are a number of camps near Berlin. One named Sachsenhausen, formerly Oranienburg, which was one of the first camps established after the Nazis came to power. Near to that is the camp of Ravensbrück, which was used exclusively for women. Some of the most notorious camps were located indeed outside of Germany. Mauthausen was in Austria. In Poland was the infamous Auschwitz. Now, to the left of the chart is a camp called Hertogenbosch, and this one was located in Holland, as the chart shows. And below it is Natzweiler, located in France. The camps were established in networks. And it may be observed that surrounding each of the major camps, the larger red dots, is a group of satellite camps. And the names of the principal camps, the most notorious camps at least, are above the map and below it on the chart. And these names for most people symbolize the Nazi system of concentration camps, as they have become known to the world since May or a little later in 1945. I should like to direct our attention briefly to the treatment which was meted out in these camps. The motion picture to which I have made reference a short time ago, and which was shown to the members of this high tribunal, has disclosed the terrible and savage treatment which was inflicted upon these Allied nationals, prisoners of war, and other victims of Nazi terror. Because the moving picture has so well shown the situation as of the time of its taking at least, I shall confine myself to a very brief discussion of the subject. The conditions which existed inside these camps were, of course, we say, directly related to the objects which these Nazi conspirators sought to achieve outside of the camps through their employment of terror. It is truly remarkable, it seems to us, how easily the words concentration camps rolled off the lips of these men. How simple all problems became when they could turn to the terror institution of the concentration camps. And I refer to document number R124, which is already before the tribunal as USA Exhibit 179. It's again that document covering the minutes of the Central Planning Committee on which the defendant Speer sat, and where the high strategy of the Nazi armament production was formulated. I do not intend to read from the document again, because I read from it this morning to illustrate another point, but the tribunal will recall that, in It was at this meeting that the defendant Speer and others were discussing the so-called slackers. And the conversation had to do with having drastic steps taken against these workers who were not putting out sufficient work to please their masters. Speer suggested that there was nothing to be said against the SS and the police taking steps and putting those known as slackers into concentration camps, and he used the words concentration camps. And he said that let it happen several times and the news will soon enough get around. And it was words spoken in this fashion, we say, which sealed the fate of many victims. As for getting the news around, as suggested by the defendant Speer, this was not left to chance, as we shall presently show. The deterrent effect of the concentration camps upon the public was a carefully planned thing. To heighten the atmosphere of terror, these camps were shrouded in secrecy. What went on behind the barbed wire enclosures was a matter of fearful conjecture in Germany and the countries under Nazi control. And this was the policy from the very beginning, when the Nazis first came into power and set up this system of concentration camps. And we refer now to document number 778 PS, which bears USA Exhibit number 247. This document is an order issued on the 1st of October, 1933 by the camp commander of Dachau. The document prescribes a program of floggings, solitary confinement, and executions for the inmates for infractions of the rules. Among the rules were those prescribing a rigid censorship concerning conditions within the camp, and I refer to the second page of the English text, the first page of the English text, the paragraph numbered Article 11. And quoting, by virtue of the law on revolutionaries, the following offenders considered as agitators will be hung. Anyone who for the purpose of agitating does the following in the camp, at work, in the quarters, in the kitchens and workshops, toilets, and places of rest. Politicizes, holds inciting speeches and meetings, forms cliques, loiters around with others, who for the purpose of supplying the propaganda of the opposition with atrocity stories, collects true or false information about the concentration camp and its institution, receives such information, buries it, talks about it to others, smuggles it out of the camp into the hands of foreign visitors or others by means of clandestine or other methods, passes it on in writing or orally to released prisoners or prisoners who are placed above them, conceals it in clothing or other articles, throws stones and other objects over the camp wall containing such informations, or produces secret documents, who for the purpose of agitating climbs on barracks roofs and trees, seeks contact with the outside by giving light or other signals, or induces others to escape or commit a crime, gives them advices to that effect, or supports such undertakings in any way whatsoever. End of the quotation. The censorship about the camps themselves was complemented by an officially inspired rumor campaign outside the camps. Concentration camps were spoken of in whispers, and the whispers were spread by agents of the secret police. When the defendant Speer said that if the threat of the concentration camp were used, the news would get around soon enough, he knew whereof he spoke. We refer to document 1531 PS. With reference to this document, I wish to submit a word of explanation. The original German text, the original German document, the captured document, was here in the document room and was translated into English as our translation shows. Yesterday we were advised that it has either been lost or misplaced, the original German text. And unfortunately, no photostatic copy was available here in Nuremberg. A certified copy is, however, being sent to the office here from Frankfurt, and it is on its way today. And I asked the tribunal's permission to offer the English translation of the German original, which is certified to be accurate by the translator, into evidence, subject to a motion to strike it if the certified copy of the original German document does not arrive. I now refer to the document in number 1531 PS. It bears our number USA Exhibit 248. This document is marked top secret. It's addressed to all state police district offices and to the Gestapo office, and for the information of the inspectors of the security police and the SD. It's an order relating to concentration camps issued by the head of the Gestapo. And I read from the English text beginning with the second paragraph and quoting directly. In order to achieve a further deterrent effect, the following must in future be observed in each individual case. The length of the period of custody must in no case be made known. Even if the Reichsfuhrer SS and chief of the German police or chief of the security police and the SD has already fixed it. The term of commitment to a concentration camp is to be openly announced as, quote, until further notice, unquote. In most serious cases, there is no objection to the increasing of the deterrent effect by the spreading of cleverly carried out rumor propaganda, more or less to the effect that, according to hearsay, in view of the seriousness of his case, the arrested man will not be released for 2 or 3 years. 4, in certain cases, the Reichsfuhrer SS and chief of the German police will order flogging in addition to detention in a concentration camp. Orders of this kind will in future also be transmitted to the state police district office concerned. In this case, too, there is no objection to spreading the rumor of this increased punishment as laid down in Section 3, Paragraph 3, insofar as this appears suitable to add to the deterrent effect. 5, naturally, particularly suitable and reliable people are to be chosen for the spreading of such news. End of the quotation.
Mr. Dodd, the tribunal think that they will take judicial notice of that United States document T2309, is it, or 2329? 2309.
2309.
Yes.
Very well, Your Honor.
And for the convenience of the defendant's counsel, The tribunal, having sat till 1, will not sit again until 2:15.
May it please the tribunal. The deterrent effect of the concentration camps was based on this promise of brutal treatment. Once in the custody of the SS guards, the victim was beaten, tortured, starved, and often murdered through the so-called extermination through work program, which was referred to yesterday, or through the mass execution gas chambers and furnaces of the camps, which were shown several days ago on the moving picture screen in this courtroom. The reports of official government investigations furnish additional evidence of the condition within the concentration camps. Document 2309 PS, which has already been referred to, and which the tribunal, of which the tribunal has taken judicial notice. I now refer to again, and particularly to the second page of the English text, beginning with the second sentence of the second paragraph. Quoting, "The work at these camps mainly consisted of underground labor, the purpose being the construction of large underground factories, storage rooms, etc. This labor was performed completely underground, and as a result of the brutal treatment, working and living conditions, a daily average of 100 prisoners died. To the one camp, Oberstaubling, 700 prisoners were transported in February 1945, and on the 15th of April 1945, only 405 of these men were living. During the 12 months preceding the liberation, Flossenburg and the branch camps under its control accounted for the death of 14,739 male inmates and 1,300 women. These figures represent the deaths as were obtained from the available records in the camp. However, they are in no way complete, as many secret mass executions and deaths took place. In 1941, an additional stockade was added at the Flossenburg camp to hold 2,000 Russian prisoners. From these 2,000 prisoners, only 102 survived. Flossenburg concentration camp can best be described as a factory dealing in death. Although this camp had in view the primary object of putting to work the mass slave labor, another of its primary objectives was the elimination of human lives by the methods employed in handling the prisoners. Hunger and starvation rations, sadism, housing facilities, inadequate clothing, medical neglect, disease, beatings, hangings, freezing, hand hanging, forced suicides, shooting, all played a major role in obtaining their objective. Prisoners were murdered at random. Spite killings against Jews were common. Injections of poison and shooting in the neck were everyday occurrences. Epidemics of typhus and spotted fever were permitted to run rampant as a means of eliminating prisoners. Life in this camp meant nothing. Killing became a common thing, so common that a quick death was welcomed by the unfortunate ones. End of the quotation. Passing to the next to the last sentence of this same paragraph, and quoting directly.
What are those exhibits which they are referred to?
evidence with the affidavit. They're attached to it.
They're not, I suppose, mimeographed in our copy.
No, we have not had an opportunity to mimeograph each one of them.
Are they documents or photographs or what?
They're principally documents. There are some few plans and photographs and so on. There are a few photographs.
Are they affidavits or what? There seem to be instances of these various forms
Well, some of them are in the form of affidavits taken at the time of the liberation of the camp from persons who were there, and others are pictures of writings that were found there and of the plans and so on. It's that sort of thing.
Yes. Well, the tribunal will take judicial notice of those exhibits as well.
Very well, Your Honor. Reading from the last sentence of this same paragraph on the same page, and quoting, on Christmas 1944, a number of prisoners were hung at one time. The prisoners were forced to view this hanging. By the side of the gallows was a decorated Christmas tree, and as expressed by one prisoner, it was a terrible sight. That combination of prisoners hanging in the air and the glistening Christmas tree. In March or April, 13 American or British parachutists were hung. They had been delivered to this camp some time before and had been captured while trying to blow up bridges. End of the quotation. We will not burden the tribunal with a recital of all of these reports. We wish, however, to make reference to the concentration camp Mauthausen, one of the most notorious extermination centers, and refer particularly to document number 2176-PS, which bears USA Exhibit number 249. This is also an official report of the Office of the Judge Advocate General of the United States Third Army. And it's dated the 17th day of June, 1945. And I wish to refer to the conclusions on page 3 of the English text, at paragraph numbered Roman number 5, beginning with the second sentence. Five, conclusions. There is no doubt that Mauthausen was the basis for long-term planning. It was constructed as a gigantic stone fortress on top of a mountain flanked by small barracks. Mauthausen, in addition to its permanency of construction, had facilities for a large garrison of officers and men, and had large dining rooms and toilet facilities for the staff. It was conducted with the sole purpose in mind of exterminating any so-called prisoner who entered within its walls. The so-called branches of Mauthausen were under direct command of the SS officials located there. All records, orders, and administrative facilities were handled for these branches through Mauthausen. The other camps, including Gusen and Ebensee, its two most notorious and largest branches, were not exclusively used for extermination, but prisoners were used as tools in construction and production until they were beaten or starved into uselessness, whereupon they were customarily sent to Mauthausen for final disposal. End of the quotation. Both from the showing of the moving picture and from these careful reports which were made by this Third Army of the United States on their arrival at these centers, we say it is clear that the conditions in these concentration camps over Germany and in a few instances outside of the actual borders of the old Reich followed the same general pattern. And the widespread incidence of these conditions makes it clear that they were not the result of sporadic excesses on the part of individual jailers, but were the result of policies deliberately imposed from above. And the crimes committed in these camps were on so vast a scale that individual atrocities pale into insignificance. We have had turned over to us two exhibits, which we are prepared to show to this tribunal only because they illustrate the depths to which the administration of these camps has sunk shortly before, at least, the time that they were liberated by the Allied armies. The tribunal will recall that in the showing of the moving picture, with respect to one of the camps, there was a showing of sections of human skin taken from human bodies in the Buchenwald concentration camp and preserved as ornaments. They were selected, these particular hapless victims, because of the tattooing which appeared on the skin. This exhibit, which we have here, is USA Exhibit 252. Attached to the exhibit is an extract of an official United States Army report describing the circumstances under which this exhibit was obtained, and that extract is set forth in document 3420 PS, which I refer to in part. It's entitled Mobile Field Interrogation Unit Number 2, PW Intelligence Bureau, Bulletin. 13, Concentration Camp Buchenwald. Preamble. The author of this account is P.W. Andreas Pfaffenberger, 1 Koi 9 Landesschützen BN. 43 years old and of limited education. He is a butcher by trade. The substantial agreement of the details of his story with those found in PWIS HLF 736 establishes the validity of his testimony. PW has not been questioned on the statements which, in the light of what is known, are apparently erroneous in certain details, nor has any effort been made to alter the subjective character of the PW's account, which he wrote without being told anything of the intelligence already known. The results of interrogation on personalities at Buchenwald have already been published. In parentheses, PWIB number 2-12, item 31. In 1939, all prisoners with tattooing on them were ordered to report to the dispensary. Yes, Your Honor. No one knew what the purpose was, but after the tattooed prisoners had been examined, the ones with the best and most artistic specimens were kept in the dispensary and then killed by injections administered by Carl Beggs, a criminal prisoner. The corpses were then turned over to the pathological department, where the desired pieces of tattooed skin were detached from the bodies and treated. The finished products were turned over to SS Standartenführer Koch's wife, who had them fashioned into lampshades and other ornamental household articles. I myself saw such tattooed skins with various designs and legends on them, such as Hansel and Gretel, which one prisoner had on his knee, and ships from prisoners' chests. This work was done by a prisoner named Wernebach. End of the quotation. I also refer to document 3421-PS, which bears USA Exhibit number 253. Quoting, I, George C. Demas, Lieutenant, United States Naval Reserve, associated with the United States Chief of Counsel for the prosecution of Axis criminality, hereby certify that the attached exhibit, consisting of parchment, was delivered by the War Crimes Section, Judge Advocate General, U.S. Army, to me in my above capacity in the usual course of business, as an exhibit found in Buchenwald Camp and captured by military forces under the command of the Supreme Commander, Allied Expeditionary Forces. End of the quotation. And the last paragraph of document 3423-PS is a conclusion reached in a United States Army report, and I quote it, based on the findings in paragraph 2, all 3 specimens are tattooed human skin. This document is also attached to this exhibit on the board. We do not wish to dwell on this pathological phase of the Nazi culture, but we do feel compelled to offer one additional exhibit, which we offer as USA Exhibit number 254. This exhibit, which is on the table, is a human head with the skull bone removed, shrunken, stuffed, and preserved. The Nazis had one of their many victims decapitated after having had him hanged, apparently for fraternizing with a German woman, and fashioned this terrible ornament from his head. The last paragraph of the official United States Army report, from which I have just read, deals with the manner in which this exhibit was acquired. It reads as follows, quoting, there I also saw the shrunken heads of 2 young Poles who had been hanged for having relations with German girls. The heads were the size of a fist, and the hair and the marks of the rope were still there. Unquote. Another certificate by Lieutenant Demas is set forth in document 3422-PS, and it is similar to the one which I have read a few minutes ago with relation to the human skin, excepting that it applies to this second exhibit. We have no accurate estimate of how many persons died in these concentration camps, and perhaps none can ever be made. But as the evidence already introduced before this tribunal indicates, the Nazi conspirators were generally meticulous record keepers. But the records which they kept about concentration camps appear to have been quite incomplete. Perhaps the character of the records resulted from the indifference which the Nazis felt for the lives of their victims. But occasionally we find a death book or a set of index cards. For the most part, nevertheless, the victims apparently faded into an unrecorded death. Reference to a set of death books suggests at once the scale of the concentration camp operations. And we refer now and offer document number 493-PS as USA Exhibit number 251. This exhibit is a set of 7 books, the death ledger of the Mauthausen concentration camp. Each book has on its cover the word Totenbuch, or Death Book, Mauthausen. In these books were recorded the names of some of the inmates who died or were murdered in this camp. And the books cover the period from January of 1939 to April of 1945. They give the name, the place of birth, the assigned cause of death and time of death of each individual recorded. In addition, each corpse is assigned a serial number, and adding up the total serial numbers for the 5-year period, one arrives at the figure of 35,318. An examination of the books is very revealing insofar as the camp's routine of death is concerned. And I invite the attention of the tribunal to Volume 5 from pages 568 to 582, which have been, a photostatic copy of which has been passed to the tribunal. These pages cover death entries made for the 19th day of March, 1945, between 15 minutes past 1 in the morning until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. In this space of 12 3/4 hours, on these records, 203 persons are reported as having died. They were assigned serial numbers running from 8390 to 8593. The names of the dead are listed. And interestingly enough, the victims are all recorded as having died of the same ailment, heart trouble. They died at brief intervals. They died in alphabetical order. The first who died was a man named Ackerman, who died at 1:15 a.m. And the last was a man named Zinger, who died at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. At 20 minutes past 2 o'clock that same afternoon, according to these records, on the 19th of March, 1945, the fatal roll call began again and continued until 4:30 o'clock. In a space of 2 hours, 75 more persons died, and once again they died all from heart failure and in alphabetical order. We find the entries recorded in the same volume from pages 582 through 586. There was another death book found at Camp Mauthausen. It's our document number 495-PS and bears USA Exhibit number 250. This is a single volume and again has on its cover the words, Death Book, Prisoners of War. And I invite the attention of the tribunal in particular to pages 234 through 246. Here the entries record the names of 208 prisoners of war, apparently Russians, who at 15 minutes past midnight on the 10th day of May, 1942, were executed at the same time. And the book notes that the execution was directed by the chief of the SD and the SIPO at that time, Heydrich. It was called to my attention as late as this morning, publication of a New York newspaper published in the United States, which part of which is made up of 3 or more pages consisting of advertisements from the families, the relatives of people who once resided in Germany or in Europe, asking for some advice about them. Most of the advertisements refer to one of these concentration camps or another. The paper is called an Aufbau, the Aufbau. It's a German language newspaper in New York City, published on the 23rd day, this particular issue, on the 23rd day of November, 1945. I do not propose to burden the record of this tribunal with the list of the names of all of these unfortunate individuals, but we refer to it as a publication in the city of New York, a German language newspaper of recent date, which illustrates the horrible extent of this terrible tragedy which has affected so many people as a result of this concentration camp institution. We feel that no particular argument is necessary to support our statement that the Nazi conspirators used these concentration camps and the related instruments of terror in them to commit crimes against humanity and to commit war crimes. More about concentration camps will of necessity be involved in the presentation concerning the persecution of the Jews. But this concludes our presentation with respect to the concentration camps as a specific entity of proof.